what is going on with the Celtics.
Drama, losses, too many players. Time for Brad and Danny Ainge. I want to hear from them, Matt.
Okay, we're going to hear from at least Brad Stevens. I don't know about Danny Ainge. Coming up in this edition of Game Time. You kind of answered all the questions. But we'll go into more detail on the Celtics here on Game Time Live. Good to have you with us. That's Sekou Smith right over there. Steve Smith right over there. My name is not Smith. It's Matt. Good to have you along with us. On this hump day, we will start with the Celtics, who cannot seem to get over the hump lately. They are back home tonight against Portland, trying to bounce back from last night's blowout in Toronto. The C's gave up an 18-0 second quarter run that took them out of the game for good. They shot just 38% in what turned out to be their most lopsided loss of the season, 118-95, as the two teams wound up splitting their season series. So after winning 10 of 11, Boston's now lost 5 of 7, giving up 116 a game over that stretch on 48% shooting. Back on the horse tonight against the Trailblazers. As promised, here's head coach Brad Stevens.
Hello.
Just starting off the latest with Terry and the knee soreness.
So Brad is playing, Terry is not. Terry aggravated a tendon in his knee that had been giving him some discomfort in the fourth quarter. I believe it was on that dunk. Was able to play through it. Sore after the game. A little bit more sore today than expected. And then I was told right before we walked through that he's unavailable.
Any update in terms of Aaron's progress going forward?
Yeah, Aaron had a great day today. He worked out, and we're going to see how he feels tomorrow. And then I would say that Friday is unlikely. But beyond that, you know, I think he could play anytime in the days after that, depending on how he comes out of today's workout.
Coach, after last night is a tough game back-to-back. These guys are really good.
They're really good. They're, you know, I think that, first of all, they just have a great way about them. They play with such force offensively. Now with the ability to post different guys, and then the way that they run off screens, the way that they hit you on screens, and then ultimately the way they shoot the ball with those guys. It's a really impressive team. Obviously the 5th-ranked offense in the league, and a team that's been together and really understands how they want to play on both ends. So heck of a challenge. They're one of the hotter teams in the league, and we're running into that quite often right now. And that's part of it. So, you know, we know we have to play really well to have a chance.
What stands out about their interior presence as well?
48 minutes of guys that can post now. I think when they came off the bench before, they certainly have good players in Collins and Leonard, but they ended up stretching you more than Nurkic and Kanter, where those guys just, you know, get the ball in the seams or get the ball in transition or get the ball on the block and go to work. That creates another level of issues because, you know, there's not too many places to help off of when you're playing against this team right now.
Is it really a test of your tenacity right now, your team as a group?
I just think we just need to, you know, and I said this yesterday, we need to be a lot more solid than we were yesterday. We need to be a lot, we're going to have to play with a lot more force, and that's only to have a chance to win. You know, I think this is a really good team we're playing against.
How do you rank communication, Brad, in terms of the things you might be concerned about on defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you always worry about every little thing, but, you know, you can communicate all you want, but if you're not back, it's hard to stop somebody. And there just has to be a reliability in doing our jobs well on every possession. We've shown ourselves more than capable of it. We've shown ourselves to be able to do it. We just have to be able to do it more consistently.
When you say force, does that translate to defense? Is it as simple as that?
Time for the upcoming schedule presented by Metro by T-Mobile. 3 straight games at home for the Celtics, starting with the Blazers tonight, then a 4-game California trip beginning with the Warriors next Tuesday. Gary Washburn has been along for the roller coaster ride as the C's beat writer for the Boston Globe, and he's with us now here on Game Time. Gary, you wrote today that, quote, something is seriously wrong with this Celtics team. What in particular stands out to you most about what you've seen during this downturn?
I mean, I just think it's the lapses the 18-0 run last night against Toronto, it's just fallen asleep at the most inopportune times. The terrible quarters. They'll play 3 good quarters and a terrible quarter and then lose the game by 5 or 6. It's usually been the third quarter. The last couple nights it's been the second quarter. The Bulls outscored them 36-18. In the second quarter a couple nights ago. Then last night in Toronto outscored them 36-13. I mean, that's unacceptable if you're a championship caliber team to just have those 12-minute lapses, times where you just don't score and then the other team just plays, globetrotters against you.
Well, it's fascinating trying to read the tea leaves here from the outside, and you hear the players saying things like, quote, "We're just not together," and quote, "We're not fighting." How clear is it at this point that whatever the issue is, it's not X's and O's?
Yeah, it's definitely mental. I mean, execution's part of it, but I think that's just lends in the guys trying to do a little too much. You have a lot of talented players in this team, but a lot of guys from night to night don't know their particular role, and so they try to play hero ball. And I don't think there's a bunch of guys in here who are selfish, who are just trying to get their points and don't care about winning. I think there's guys who truly believe that they can do what it takes to win, and so, okay, I'll take this guy one-on-one. Okay, I can hit this three-pointer. But it ends up being a bad possession. It ends up being something that's not productive, and then all of a sudden there's a run out, a fast break, and Toronto's dunking, uncontested dunk, or guys are just lapsing, or guys are putting their heads down after missing shots. I mean, this team has to be stronger, more mental fortitude, just get back on defense, the basic things that great teams do. And this team hasn't been playing that way for a while.
Gary, Steve Smith, I know you're in the inside, but just looking on the outside, they are so talented. They have so many players. Reminds me a little bit of our Portland Trailblazers team when you had 11, 12 deep. But there comes a time where you have to cut the roster down, and that's where I look for Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens. Somebody can't play these minutes. Somebody can't be that guy. And that's my opinion of the Boston Celtics. They're going to have to make a hard call and have to sit somebody. What are your thoughts on that, Gary?
Steve, I agree with you. I mean, they're just going to have to play potentially an 8-man rotation, maybe 9. They can't run 10, 11 guys out there. They're going to have to shorten things up. They're going to have to give guys more minutes and more defined roles. They're going to have to highlight guys like Jaylen Brown. It might be to the point of taking a guy like Terry Rozier out of the rotation, or putting a Brad Wanamaker in, or taking a guy like Daniel Tice out. Like, they're going to have to figure something out. I think they need to use rookie Robert Williams more. He's a rim protector, a guy who can, catch those alley-oops. He's kind of like a baby, low-budget Tyson Chandler at this point in his career. Maybe they can throw him in for minutes as they did last night against Toronto. They're going to have to do something, but you're right, Steve. To sit there and run 11 guys out there and go, okay, do what you do, and guys not know their roles, not know how many minutes they're going to play, not know they're going to play in the fourth quarter, or when they're going to get taken out of the game, that's really rough.
Gary, should we read anything into Danny Ainge being in that locker room talking to Kyrie in front of his locker after that game? Is there something more going on? Is this about some long-term, preventive care you're doing with Kyrie, or is this just about right now getting this team back on track?
Sekou, I don't think it's too much to look into it besides Kyrie maybe venting a little bit, or maybe Danny saying, what do you see out there? What's going on? And, just kind of fostering that relationship. They still think they have a chance to bring Kyrie back. As remote as that is becoming day to day, they still think they have a chance to sign him to a long-term deal. So you want to make him comfortable. And if you're Danny Ainge, you want to talk to Kyrie and see what he thinks. This guy's a champion, an Olympic champion, multi-time All-Star. So he knows what's going out there on the court. Now, whether he can fix it or not, that's another question. But I do think that it's significant that they're talking, that Kyrie isn't icing people out, or he isn't, he's being short with us. I think they're getting a little bit impatient with the media. That's always the case. But I do think it's a good sign for Celtics faithful that him and Danny are communicating.
Well, he certainly was short with you guys last night, watching his post-game comments with the media assembled around him. But that is part of the equation here, the specter of the offseason that looms in just a few months from now. And this week, of course, there was the Athletic report from Shams Charania that Ainge made clear to the Pelicans that any Celtic, quote, can be available this summer. How has that news been received?
I mean, these guys have social media. They read articles. They know that this team is potentially going to make an offer for Anthony Davis in July, and a lot of guys like a Tatum and a Brown and even a Rozier and Marcus Smart know that their names could be in that trade. So guys understand, and that doesn't help matters at all, because there's already a level of uncertainty with this team, because with Marcus Morris being a free agent, with Kyrie's situation, Al Horford can opt out. Terry Rozier is a restricted free agent. This team can be significantly different next year. So there's always already been a pressure on this team to perform this year. But now, with the AD thing hovering over him, I think guys are maybe just figuring out, well, what do I do when I know I'm not going to be here next year? Or do I start looking for homes in New Orleans? Or what do I do? Because, obviously my name's going to be bantied about if you're a guy like a Jason Tatum or a Jaylen Brown, because if I'm, Danny Ferry, the GM, Tatum's the first guy I'm asking for, and then I'm asking for Brown after that. So that has to mess with the heads of some of these young guys who have not been exposed yet to the big business of the NBA.
Well, the good news is the housing market in New Orleans is much more agreeable than Boston, so they've got that going for them.
Agreed.
If that's the way it plays out, right? Gary
Correct, Matt,
Washburn, the
correct.
Boston Globe on the soap opera with the Celtics. Thanks much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, when you hear the comments from the guys about fighting and all the other sort of coded messaging from the Celtics inside the locker room, a lot of it has to do with the defensive end. And Brad Stevens even said we're taking shortcuts defensively. What's he talking about?
Well, and he's right. But I think also, how do you correct it? I'm going to play the guys that are not taking shortcuts. You have so much talent at Sekou, and it comes down, just from my opinion, you can't play 10 or 11 guys. You can be talented. You got to cut this roster to 8, 9. And that's why I look at Brad hasn't made that decision right now. There's so many guys that play for the Celtics, and they're so talented, but they never get a rhythm on either end. The reason why they were so good last year, their identity was defense. They came out, Terry Rozier knew he's going to play 30 to 35 minutes. Marcus Smart knew he's going to play 30 to 35 minutes. Now it's in and out, in and out. And it looks like, depending on how you're playing offensively, that you're going to stay in the game. Their rotation has to get cut to 8 or 9. The odd man out for me right now, not because I don't think he's a great player. He's just not ready. Gordon Hayward, physically, he doesn't look like he's there.
Yeah.
He could be next year, but Gordon Hayward might be the guy, in my opinion. They have to sit and let somebody else go out there and
And that is fascinating, right? Given the contract and everything. And he's actually played really well in February. Shooting percentages are way up, but you're right, he doesn't look like the all-star, the Western Conference all-star they signed.
And rightfully so, because of the injury.
Sure, it makes perfect sense. But defensively, I think we have tape here to support some of the defensive issues that you've seen.
Matt, and we're going to show this. It's not because they're not capable. It's when you're not on the same page. They could watch this. I mean, there's 4 Celtics back, and you see Siakam getting out and running, Jason Tatum trying to help. You go help that guy. Right now, this team right now is like, it's not my fault. There's a drive. This is in a half-court situation. You saw the Boston Celtics last year, the year before that, rotating. There's 4 or 5 guys back, and you throw a pass. There's no effort. Yes, Kawhi is bigger than Marcus Smart, but where's the next guy to make him pass the basketball? And if I would say they didn't have the personnel to do it, then you start to worry. They are a fabulous defensive team.
Yeah.
Why are there not now? There's not injuries. This team right now is just not on the same page. They're all looking at each other. Something's going wrong. Also, watch their bench. There's no guys excited for each other when they're playing.
There are a ton of long, rangy defenders on that team. There's no reason they should be making plays like that.
Less is more sometimes in this league. And last year, when Brad Stevens had less to work with from a rotation standpoint, they got more out of everybody. Now that you have this abundance of bodies and all these options, and you can't figure out which buttons to push, it's put a different kind of pressure on Brad Stevens, and we haven't talked about that. Don't forget about all the genius talk, and now he was arguably the best coach in basketball last year, but it was in a situation where these young players were forced into roles that maybe, Smitty, they weren't ready for, but they thrived in that spotlight. Now you're asking them to play completely different roles, and they're not excelling the way they did. But it's more about the vets even than it is the young guys, because when they play without Kyrie, you look and see how much different they play, how much more effective they are individually, and therefore as a group. I think the other thing that's really hurt them throughout this whole stretch was Aaron Baines being out. You're talking about a physical guy who brought a certain kind of energy and a balance that, he and Al Horford, kind of as your 2 big men and defensive anchors, that was missing for a long time for this team. So you didn't have that to lean on, that defensive backbone. And we cannot overstate how important the talk that consumed the Los Angeles Lakers team about the trade deadline even though nobody thought Boston was going to be making any moves at the deadline, that talk invaded their locker room as well. So their young guys are now digesting this daily dose of who's going to be here, who's not. You start playing with a different focus. You start understanding that, hey, this might not be my long-term home. Let me go out here and showcase myself, get mine. And that's when you start looking around that locker room and hearing what guys are saying. You start reading between the line and parsing every word, and it makes you wonder, are the issues they're having technical or emotional? And I think it's a twisted combination of both that has led to them being the fragile team that they are right now.
Sekou makes a good point. Less is more. Bangs was a guy that you can play him 40 minutes, but he doesn't need a play ran for him at all. And then I think also, like you said, there's another person in that locker room, the trade talk. And then now the media is in the locker room. There's more media in the locker room not talking about how well you're playing. Do you feel you're leaving? Where's Kyrie going? I think now the distractions, and that's where it's gone. That's the business of basketball. You still have to be a pro and still come out there and do your job.
Brad Stevens, 5th year on the job. He's improved in wins every other season. This is setting up to be the first disappointing season since he arrived in Boston. Still plenty of time to go to move up into that top 4 in the East. In Charlotte, Rockets in town. That's James Harden doing his thing. Up top, Clint Capella with the bucket, 13-11 Hornets. Warriors make their second stop of a 4-game trip east tonight as they hit South Florida. Golden State has won 18 of their last 21 games. So for all the nitpicking about what works and what doesn't work with the new lineup, which won't include DeMarcus Cousins, he's out tonight resting, they're still really, really, really good. And taking on a Heat team that has sort of inexplicably lost 6 in a row on their home floor. Weird. Maybe they got to go back to their regular colors on that home floor.
I agree.
Maybe that's the problem. I don't know. I'm not saying it is, but worth a try. Let's hear from head coach Steve Kerr.
Yeah, Loon's going to start for DeMarcus.
Second, the last time you played the Heat, that was just a 2-point game. What do you remember reviewing on tape about how you like to play?
They kicked our butts last game. They really did. We had to play really well down the stretch to win the game. But they were more physical, better defensively, smarter offensively. They outplayed us, so we were fortunate to get out of there. And I'm hoping that the fact that it's so fresh on our minds, it's only 2 weeks ago, that our guys will remember how hard you have to beat this team. And it's always been the case since as long as I can remember. They have an identity, and that identity is they're physical, they're tough, they're going to get after you, they're going to defend, rebound. So we've got to be ready for that.
Somewhat of a quiet month, kind of February. How much of that do you think is just random? How much do you think trying to integrate into Marcus is maybe?
It feels more random to me. It doesn't feel like there's anything different about the way we're playing or the way he's playing. Just every player kind of goes through stretches where maybe things don't go quite as well, but the drill with Steph. I mean, as soon as you think, oh man, he's in a little rut, he's going to make 10 threes and you're going to forget about it.
Steve, have you guys already decided you're going to sit tomorrow?
No decisions have been made on tomorrow night. I know DeMarcus will play tomorrow, but nothing else has been decided.
Jordan's feeling better?
Yeah, he's feeling a lot better. He's kept food down and lots of fluids, and so he'll be ready to go tonight.
Steve, at what point do you start thinking? I know you said this morning, well, it's going to be based on matchups anyway, but so at what point do you start shifting your thinking toward playoffs and rotations?
Not now. We still have a quarter of the season left, and we're just trying to get better. And as we get closer to the playoffs, maybe we'll have an eye towards who's in our rotation and combinations and that stuff. But right now we're just getting through the regular season and dealing with an absence here and there like DeMarcus tonight, and trying to get better, trying to take care of all the details that we need to be better with.
Steve, what is that? What are some of the things you're trying to get better at before the playoffs?
Well, boxing out. I mean, you were there 2 weeks ago. I think the Heat at the end of the first quarter, it was 19-4 on the glass, I believe. It's like 7-1 on the offensive glass after 5 minutes. The tape doesn't lie. They would shoot and we would just turn and watch. And Whiteside was in there. Everybody was in there, just creating second chance opportunities. So, that's a big one. Transition defense has been a problem for us. Defending too aggressively and fouling the other night was a problem in Charlotte. So, we got a lot of things to work on.
How important is the #1 seed in the West for you guys?
We'd like to get it. I mean, it will never be a priority over health going into the playoffs. Health is always #1, but we're right there, and assuming we're healthy.